The heat in Red Creek wasn't the kind you escaped. It wrapped around you, pressed into your skin, slid beneath fabric, and dared you to notice your own body. By the time Amara Belle Johnson stepped down from the stagecoach, the sun sat low and heavy, gilding the dust like molten gold. She stood still for a moment, letting the town see her. Wooden storefronts lined the street like spectators. Men paused mid-step. A woman near the mercantile slowed her sweeping. Conversation dipped, not stopped, just lowered enough to make room for curiosity. Amara adjusted her grip on her valise and lifted her chin. She was used to eyes, used to the quick assessments, the longer looks, the ones that lingered where they thought she wouldn't notice. What she wasn't used to was the way the air shifted, as if Red Creek itself had inhaled when she arrived. Then she felt it, a presence, solid, unmoving. Across the street, a man sat astride a horse so large it made other mounts look like toys. He was broader still, tall enough that even seated he seemed to command the street. One boot rested casually in the stirrup, the other hooked with lazy confidence. Sleeves rolled, forearms corded and darkened by sun. His shirt clung slightly, sweat darkened at the chest. Caleb Wilder. She didn't know his name yet, but she would. His hat shaded his eyes until he looked up, and when he did, the moment sharpened. His gaze didn't dart or skim, it landed, slow, deliberate, as if he were reading something written just for him. Amara's breath faltered, just a little. He wasn't smiling, wasn't leering. He simply watched her the way a man watches a flame, aware that stepping too close might burn. She shifted her weight, skirts brushing her calves, corset snug enough to remind her of her own shape. The dust stirred around her boots as she took her first step onto the boardwalk. One step, then another. She could feel him tracking her progress without looking back. Each footfall echoed louder than it should have. Her body felt warm, too warm, not just from the sun, from awareness, from the way his attention settled low in her belly. When she passed close enough to smell leather and horse and clean sweat, his voice stopped her. "Need help with that bag, miss?" Low, rough, like it had been worn smooth by years of use. She turned slowly. Up close he was even larger, shoulders broad, chest solid, jaw shadowed with dark stubble. His eyes were lighter than she expected, a pale blue that held steady when they met hers. "I've carried heavier," she said. Not sharp, not flirtatious, just true. Something flickered across his face, approval maybe, or surprise. "Didn't doubt it," he replied. They stood there, suspended, too close for strangers, too far for anything else. The town seemed to recede, the sounds dulling, until all Amara could hear was her own pulse and his breathing, slow and controlled. His gaze dipped just briefly, not crude, appreciative. When it lifted again, it felt like a question. She answered by stepping past him. The brush of air between them felt intimate, charged. She sensed his restraint the way one senses a storm holding itself back. Behind her, she heard the faintest exhale. She didn't look back, but she knew he was watching as she walked away, hips swaying despite herself, spine straight, every nerve awake. Inside the boarding house, Amara leaned against the door for half a second longer than necessary. Her cheeks were warm, her breath uneven. She pressed a hand to her chest. "Get it together," she murmured. Across the street, Caleb Wilder remained mounted long after the stagecoach driver had left. The sheriff was talking. Caleb nodded where expected, but his attention stayed fixed on the boarding house door, as if it might open again. His body felt tight, alert, like something had been stirred that hadn't woken in a long time. He adjusted his grip on the reins, jaw flexing. "She knew?" the sheriff asked. Caleb swallowed once. "Yeah." There was a pause, then quieter. "Trouble?"
Caleb's mouth curved faintly, not a smile, something closer to interest. "No," he said, "not trouble." He nudged his horse forward, forcing movement, but the image followed him. The way she'd stood her ground, the calm confidence in her voice, the fullness of her curves held without apology. That night, as the town settled and lamps dimmed, Amara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She told herself it was nothing, just a look, just a voice, but her body remembered differently, and somewhere across Red Creek, so did his.
The storm came in fast, the way things always did in Red Creek, without warning and with no intention of asking permission. Amara had been halfway back from the mercantile when the sky split open. Rain fell thick and heavy, darkening the dust into mud within seconds. She gathered her skirts and ran, boots slipping once before she caught herself, breath laughing out of her despite the sudden chill. The livery was closest. She ducked inside just as thunder cracked overhead, loud enough to rattle the beams. The smell of hay and leather wrapped around her, warm and earthy. She leaned against the door, chest rising and falling, listening to the rain drum against the roof like an impatient heartbeat. For a moment, she was alone. Then the door opened again. Amara didn't have to turn to know it was him. Caleb Wilder filled the doorway like he belonged there, rain slicking his hair, shirt clinging to his chest and arms, water tracing slow paths down his forearms. He paused when he saw her, hand still on the door, eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her stomach tighten. "You," he said, not accusing, not surprised, just aware. "Seems we keep choosing the same shelter," she replied. Thunder rolled again, closer this time. The horses shifted in their stalls, nickering softly. Caleb stepped fully inside, shutting the door behind him. The space immediately felt smaller, warmer, as if the storm had followed him in. "You all right?" he asked, gaze sweeping her quickly, checking, assessing. "Yes," she said, "just wet." The word landed differently than she meant it to. Something flickered across his face, quick, controlled. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. He removed his hat, running a hand through damp hair. Water beaded along his lashes. "Storm will pass," he said. "They always do." "So do people," she replied softly. That earned her his full attention. He took a step closer, then another, not crowding her, just close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, smell rain and soap and something uniquely him. "You planning on passing through?" he asked. "No," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I'm here to stay." The words settled between them like a promise neither had asked for, but both felt. Another thunderclap. The lantern hanging from a beam flickered, casting shadows across his face, sharp cheekbones, the faint scar near his temple she hadn't noticed before. "You don't scare easy," he murmured. "I've had practice," she said. His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. "I believe that." They stood there, the air thick with unsaid things. The rain grew heavier, the sound nearly deafening. It felt intimate being enclosed like this, cut off from the rest of the world. Caleb shifted his weight, then leaned in, not enough to touch, just enough that his voice dropped, rough and low. "You don't know what you're doing to me." Her breath caught. The words brushed her skin like fingertips. Heat pooled low in her belly, unexpected and unwelcome, and entirely welcome all the same. She turned her head just slightly, enough that her lips were near his jaw, her breath stirring the damp hair at his cheek. "Then maybe," she said quietly, "you shouldn't stand so close." For a heartbeat, she thought he might step back. He didn't. Instead, he exhaled slowly, as if steadying himself. "I'm trying to be a gentleman." Her pulse thudded. "Are you succeeding?"
A low sound escaped him, not quite a laugh, more like a growl he caught before it could fully form. He lifted his hand, stopping inches from her arm, paused, looked at her, not her body, but her face, her eyes. "If I touch you," he said, barely above the rain, "I want it to be because you asked." The restraint in that nearly undid her. She swallowed, skin buzzing where his hand hovered. "You can," she said. One word, soft, certain. His fingers closed gently around her forearm, warm, solid, grounding. The contact sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold. His thumb brushed slow, absent-minded circles, as if he were memorizing the feel of her. "Tell me if it's too much," he murmured. "It isn't," she answered. Their eyes held, the world narrowed to that point of contact, to the way his touch was careful despite his size, to the way her body leaned toward him without her permission. Thunder cracked again, closer still. Caleb stepped in, close enough now that her chest brushed his when she breathed. He didn't kiss her, didn't rush. He simply rested his forehead against her, breath warm against her lips. "You're dangerous," he said softly. "So I've been told," she smiled, small but sure. They stayed that way until the rain began to ease, neither willing to be the first to move. When he finally stepped back, it felt like waking from something vivid and unfinished. "I'll walk you home," he said. She nodded. Outside, the storm faded, but the heat between them didn't. It lingered.
After the storm, Red Creek felt rinsed clean. Dust pressed flat, the air cooler but heavier somehow, like it remembered what had happened beneath the thunder. So did Amara. She went about her days with practiced calm, helped at the boarding house in exchange for reduced rent, learned which shopkeepers smiled with kindness and which smiled with curiosity sharpened just enough to sting. She told herself she was settling in, but every so often she felt it again. That awareness. Caleb Wilder never hovered, he never claimed space that wasn't offered, and yet, somehow, he was always there, across the street, leaning against a post, passing by on horseback, just slow enough to meet her eyes. When he did, the look they shared carried the echo of rain and closeness and restraint. One afternoon, she found him at the edge of town, where the land opened wide, sky stretching endlessly. He was fixing a fence, shirt sleeves rolled, muscles shifting under sun-warmed skin. She slowed without meaning to. "You keep sneaking up on me," he said without turning. She smiled. "You keep noticing." He glanced back then, eyes bright. Hard not to. They stood a few feet apart, the open land around them making the silence feel intimate instead of awkward. Wind tugged at her skirts. Caleb wiped his hands on a cloth, then hesitated, as if unsure what to do with them. "You been all right?" she said. Then, because it mattered, "I've been good." His shoulders eased slightly at that. "Glad to hear it." A pause. He gestured toward the fence. "Walk with me?" She nodded. They moved side by side along the posts, close enough that their arms brushed now and then. Each accidental touch sent a small electric awareness through her, sharp and fleeting. "You keep this quiet all the time?" she asked. "Only when I'm thinking too much," he replied. "And what are you thinking about now?" He stopped walking. She turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close they were. The sun sat low behind him, outlining his frame in gold. "You," he said simply. Her breath stuttered. He continued before she could respond, voice steady but low. "About how you look at me like you're deciding something, and how every time I think about stepping closer, I remember I don't want to rush you." Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with something warmer, deeper. "I'm not fragile," she said quietly. "I know," he answered. That's not why I'm careful." She searched his face, reading the truth there. "Then why?" "Because I want you to want me, not just the moment, me." The honesty of it stole her breath. She stepped closer, close enough now that she could feel his heat again, could see the faint pulse at his throat. "I do," she said. "I just don't want to lose myself in it." He lifted his hand, slow, giving her every chance to stop him. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her waist, light, reverent, as if touching her was something to be earned. The contact sent a warmth spiraling through her. "Tell me if I cross a line," he murmured. She swallowed. "You're right on it." His mouth curved slightly. "Then I'll stay right here." He didn't kiss her, didn't pull her in. He simply rested his hand at her waist, grounding, steady, as if he were holding back something powerful and patient all at once. The restraint made her ache. She leaned in first, not enough to close the distance entirely, just enough that her breath brushed his collarbone. His inhale was sharp, controlled with effort. "You're doing that on purpose," he said quietly. She smiled against the space between them. "Am I?" His other hand came up then, stopping just short of her back, hovering. "Amara," he murmured. The way he said her name, slow, weighted, sent a shiver through her. "Yes?" "You don't know what you're doing to me," he said again, but this time it wasn't a warning, it was a confession. She lifted her head, eyes meeting his. "Then tell me." He leaned down just enough that his forehead touched hers. Their noses brushed. The nearness felt dizzying. "I think about you when I shouldn't. I imagine what it would be like to forget myself with you. And then I don't, because I want this," he gestured between them, "to last." Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with something warmer, deeper. "I'm not fragile," she said quietly. "Then I'll wait," he said. She smiled, soft and certain. "So will I." They stood there a moment longer, bodies close, future unwritten, the want between them, no longer sharp, but deep, rooted, and growing. By the time evening settled over Red Creek, the sky had gone soft and bruised with color, lavender melting into deep blue, stars just beginning to prick through. Amara had spent the day restless, her body aware in a way that made stillness impossible. She told herself it was foolish. They had done nothing wrong, barely done anything at all. And yet her skin still remembered the weight of Caleb's hand at her waist, the way his voice sounded when he said her name, the promise threaded through every pause he chose not to fill. When the knock came at her door, she knew it was him before she crossed the room. She opened it to find Caleb standing there, hat in his hands, posture careful, almost formal, but his eyes gave him away, darker than usual, intent. "I was passing by," he said. Then, after a beat, "That's a lie." She smiled despite herself. "Come in." The boarding house parlor was empty at this hour, lanterns turned low. The quiet felt thick, pressing in from all sides. Caleb shut the door behind him, the soft click sounding louder than it should have. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "You all right?" he asked finally. "Yes," she said, and she added honestly, "I've been thinking." "That's so?" "About whether wanting something makes it dangerous." He studied her, slow and careful. Sometimes it just makes it honest." She took a step closer, then another. The space between them shrank until she could feel the heat of him again, could sense the effort it took for him to stay still. "You keep holding yourself back," she said softly. "I'm trying not to take what isn't freely given." Her chest tightened at that, not with fear, but with something tender and fierce. "I'm not something to be taken,
but I am offering." His breath hitched. He reached out then, hands settling at her waist, firmer than before, but still controlled. The contact sent a slow, spreading warmth through her, grounding and dizzying all at once. "Tell me if you want me to stop," he murmured. "I will," she promised. He leaned down, forehead resting against hers, the position intimate in a way that made her knees weak. His thumbs traced slow, unconscious patterns at her sides. "You feel like trouble," he said quietly. She smiled. "You don't look scared." "I am," he admitted, "just not enough to walk away." That did something to her. She tilted her head, closing the distance between their mouths, not rushing, not demanding, just waiting. When he kissed her, it was deeper than before, not frantic, intentional, his mouth warm and sure, moving with a patience that made her breath catch. She responded instinctively, hands rising to grip his shirt, fingers curling into the fabric as if she needed the anchor. He groaned softly into her mouth, a sound low and unguarded. The kiss broke, but only barely. His lips traced the corner of her mouth, her cheek, the sensitive place beneath her ear. She shivered when his breath brushed her skin. "Caleb," she whispered. He paused instantly, lifting his head. "Tell me the word." "Don't stop," she said. His restraint frayed just enough to show. He kissed along her jaw, slow and reverent, his hands firm at her waist, as if reminding himself where they belonged. When his mouth found her neck, the touch was light, teasing, controlled, but it sent heat spiraling through her. Her head tipped back before she could stop it. "That," he murmured against her skin, "is exactly why I'm being careful." Her hands slid up his chest, feeling the strength there, the steady heartbeat beneath. "You don't have to protect me from wanting you." He pulled back just enough to look at her, eyes searching. "No," he said, "but I want to protect this." She saw it then, the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched as if holding himself together took real effort. "You're stronger than you think," she said gently. He laughed under his breath. "Not where you're concerned." The admission settled heavy and intimate between them. For a moment the world narrowed to breath and warmth and the closeness that promised more. His hands slid slightly, still respectable, still safe, but the shift was enough to make her gasp softly. Caleb froze. "Too much?" he asked. She shook her head. "Just new." He exhaled slowly, resting his forehead against hers again. "I don't want our first mistake to be thinking we had to rush." Her heart softened at that. She reached up and brushed her thumb along his jaw, feeling the roughness there. "Then let's not." They stood like that for a long moment, bodies pressed close, heat banked but not spent. It felt powerful, choosing restraint together instead of having it forced upon them. When he finally stepped back, it was with visible effort. "I should go," he said, voice rough. "Yes," she agreed, "before we forget why we shouldn't." He smiled then, slow and genuine. "You make it very hard to be good." She lifted her chin. "You make it worth it." He left her there, breathless and steady all at once, the echo of his touch lingering long after the door closed. That night, as Amara lay awake, she realized something important. The want between them wasn't reckless, it was deliberate, and that made it far more dangerous and far more promising than anything she'd known before.
Morning came slow and honeyed, sunlight spilling through the thin curtains of Amara's room like it was in no hurry to leave her alone with her thoughts. She lay still for a long moment, one hand resting over her stomach, the other tucked beneath her pillow. Sleep had come late. Her body remembered too much. The weight of Caleb's hands at her waist, the restraint in his voice, the way he had left when staying would have been easier. That mattered more than she wanted to admit. In the daylight, desire could feel reckless if she let it, so she grounded herself in routine, washing her face, braiding her hair, lacing her boots with care. By the time she stepped outside, she felt steadier, though something warm still coiled low in her belly. Red Creek stirred awake around her. Doors opened, horses shifted, life went on. She didn't expect to see him so soon. Caleb stood near the water pump, sleeves rolled, pouring water over his hands. He looked up as if he felt her before he saw her. Their eyes met, and something quiet passed between them, acknowledgement, understanding, a shared memory neither needed to name. "Morning," he said. "Morning." They didn't move closer, not yet. "You sleep?" he asked. "A little," she said honestly. "You?" He huffed a soft breath. "Some." Silence stretched, comfortable but charged. The town moved around them, unaware of the careful balance being held in that small space. "I was going to check the fence line," he said. "Figured I'd walk you part way, if that's all right." "I'd like that." They fell into step together, not touching at first. The road out of town was quieter, dust soft beneath their boots. Birds called from fence posts. The world felt open here, forgiving. Caleb broke the silence. "I've been thinking about last night." "So have I." He glanced at her, then back ahead. "I don't regret stopping." Her heart lifted at that. "Neither do I." He slowed, then stopped altogether. She turned to face him, the morning light laying him bare, no shadows to hide behind. "I want to be clear," he said. "I don't want you thinking my restraint means I don't want you." Her lips curved faintly. "I never thought that." "Good," he said, relief evident, "because wanting you is the easy part." "And the hard part?" "Making sure it's more than want." She studied him, this man who could have taken more and chose not to. "What does more look like to you?" He took a breath, steadying. "Showing up, choosing you when it's inconvenient, being patient even when my body's telling me otherwise." That warmth in her belly deepened, softened. She stepped closer this time, closing the space deliberately. "Then we want the same thing." His hand lifted, slow, stopping just short of her hip. He waited. She nodded. His palms settled there, firm, grounding, not claiming, present. The contact sent a quiet thrill through her, less sharp than before, but deeper, steadier. "You feel different today," he murmured. "Different how?" "Calmer," he said, "like you decided something." She smiled. "I did." His thumb brushed once, almost unconsciously. "And?" "I decided I won't rush, but I also won't pretend I don't feel this." His jaw tightened, not just with restraint this time, but with appreciation. "I can live with that," he said. They stood close, foreheads nearly touching, sharing breath. The moment felt intimate without being secretive, rooted in choice instead of impulse. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to her temple, gentle, almost chaste, somehow more powerful than anything else they'd shared. Her eyes closed at the contact. "That's dangerous," she murmured. He smiled against her skin. "I know." They walked on, hands brushing now and then, the tension between them no longer threatening to spill over, but humming, alive. At the edge of town they stopped. "I'll see you tonight?" he asked. She met his gaze, steady and warm. "Yes." No promises spoken, none needed. As she walked back toward Red Creek, Amara felt something settle inside her, not certainty, but confidence. Desire didn't have to mean surrendering herself. It could mean choosing, again and again, what she wanted to build. Behind her, Caleb watched until she disappeared down the road.
He exhaled slowly, hand flexing at his side, body still aware, still wanting, but his chest felt lighter than it had in years. Whatever this was between them, it wasn't a passing heat. It was a slow fire, and for the first time in a long while, neither of them was afraid to tend it.